Hello and welcome everyone to another Lean In event. And today's topic is Women in Entrepreneurship. I'm Amrita Agarwal and I'm the events team lead at Lean In Canada's Vancouver chapter. And I'm really excited to bring this event to you so that we can all take small steps towards creating safe spaces for women to grow as entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for joining us today and supporting Lean In throughout these events. And we would love to see your beautiful faces during the event. So please turn on the video if you're able to and if you want to, and we would really love that. Thank you. So we will start the panel with a few questions from the Lean In team and then open up the floor for any questions that you all might have. So let's get started. I'm so happy to introduce our lovely panelists. Today, we have with us Meeru Dhalwala, who has been cooking and running the kitchens at Vidges and Rangoli restaurants, which she co-owns with Vikram Vij since February 1995, which has been hailed by the New York Times as easily among the finest Indian restaurants in the world. So Meeru, why don't you give us a wave? Okay. We also have with us Brooke Johansen, who is the part owner of a dress company called Park and Fifth, located in Vancouver, Canada. They sell modern Canadian-made bridesmaid, bridal, and social occasion dresses. So can we have a wave from you, Brooke? Thank you. Lastly, we have Sarah Sangha with us, who is the founder of Willem Wellness, a Vancouver-based genderless self-care and personal wellness line. She's on a mission to help many people harness the power of aromatology, the science between scent and emotion, and use these scents to transform mood as part of a daily wellness routine. So can we get away from you, Sarah? Thank you for joining us. Okay. Thank you so much to the panelists for giving us your time and joining us today. So let's get started with the questions. Well, we all know that we have a defining moment when we finally realize we want to make it on our own. If you had such a moment, what was it for you? Sarah, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I think for me, the moment where I realized that I had to make my own way was when I had just finished journalism school, and I was meeting a lot of different artists and designers and musicians, and I was noticing that anytime I would ask them about work-life balance, that was their greatest challenge in completing their work. And I noticed that echoed a lot of things in my life and my friends' lives. And so I saw a problem and I saw a way to achieve it naturally, to achieve a solution. And I really believe that there's really no coincidences. And I just kept seeing signs over and over and over that I should take the leap. And so that's what got me to where I am today.
Thank you for sharing your story, Sarah. What about you, Brooke? What was your story like?
For me, it was a very clear-cut sign as well, like Sarah. I had was just finishing up my kind of 3-year tenure at a clothing company called Kit and Ace that was located in Vancouver as well. And I had met a friend while I was working there who ended up being my business partner. So she started on her own first. She left that company before I did. And I went to help her out with Park and Fifth in the early stages and knew instantly that I wanted to be a part of what was going to happen and go out on that journey with her as well. For me, having a business partner is really key. And that was just a lovely merriment that has led to our success for sure.
Thank you so much, Brooke, for sharing. What about you, Meeru? What was your journey?
So I never really had a ta-da moment. I just knew, so I'm from Washington, D.C. With immigrant parents, and my mother really put it in my head from a young kid onwards that she did not go through everything that she went through so that I could give up on anything. And so I just knew for a fact, even when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, even though I wasn't really doing much, I just knew instinctively that I wanted a lot out of this life. All right, that was my big thing is, you know what? I want a lot out of whatever it is going to be. I just wasn't quite sure what it was. At university, I joined into Amnesty International and a lot of different human rights and development organizations. And so my first career was in international third world development work and human rights. And so my very first job that I got out of university a long time ago was with Amnesty International, but it was to work against the death penalty in the United States, which means that I was a big minority. And so that was my first job. And so then I figured out, okay, I like being passionate about what I do. So that's when I figured out that it's very important for me that I can do anything, no matter how hard it is, if I deem it important to what I'm doing. I just don't like to be wasting my life. I have this weird thing in me. So then I got my master's degree in economics. And so until I was 30 years old, I was in the nonprofit sector working on economic projects in Africa. I was based in DC, but the projects were in Africa. And when the Soviet Union was falling apart in the 1980s, my career, the love of my life, you know, being a chef, being a business owner, having an all-woman kitchen, that was an accident. And that's really what I would love to stress right now is a lot of us don't really know what the heck we want to do. We just know we want to do, right? And a lot of us, what we want to do, we realize at some point, maybe that's not what we're really great at doing. So I want to introduce a lot of fluidity to this conversation. My dream was to be a writer. That was my dream. When I was in high school, I wanted to be Margaret Atwood or something. And I realized at some point that I had to come to terms with the fact that, you know what, I'm just not going to be that writer. And I had to find something else and learn how to love whatever that something else was. And I love it passionately. So accidentally, I got married, moved to Vancouver, and I realized that if we were going to make any money and be a success, I needed to learn how to use a knife. And I had to learn how to start smelling spices and just get to it. And I did.
Thank you, Meeru. And thank you for pointing out that we all have different journeys, but it all led us to entrepreneurship. So the next question that we have for you is, while starting out, how much did you all know about financial fluency and how to keep your business afloat? So Brooke, why don't you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Something that kind of hits you with a ton of bricks early on too, when you start out on your own as entrepreneurs. It's something that myself and my two business partners knew a little bit about, but not a lot. So it was definitely learning on the go, seeking out other mentors, not just in our field, but within our circles. That's helped a lot. So just leaning on the people that you have in your own life, making sure you're getting yourself out there and having phone calls, text messages, coffee dates with anyone and everyone that you can potentially make a good contact or pick their brain for information, because you don't know where those are going to lead. And for us, that really led to the right information at the right time for those financial decisions. There's three business partners in this business, and we all had business degree backgrounds. So of course we learned those things in school, but for me personally, that was nothing like actually going out in the real world. That sunk in much better for me and doing it in real life in my own practice. So yes, we didn't know a ton, but we've learned it as we go, and are still learning constantly, especially about that. There's always so much to learn. There's always different strategies for everyone, and it really depends on you, your business, and the structure of it.
Thank you so much, Brooke, and thank you for pointing out the importance of networking and having mentors as well. How about you, Meeru? How much did you know before starting out?
So my financial background was, again, in the nonprofit world. So when we did grants and proposals, I had to, at that time it was called Lotus 123, then Excel. So I knew how to read the financials. I knew how to do budgets and everything. But in the restaurant business, again, it's a very different, it starts out really slow. Investments can be really high in the beginning. I want to be honest here. So, you know, Vikram and I, we together had a dream of what we wanted to do, but we didn't really quite have the money for it. And back then, I flat out had to lie to the bank to get a loan because no bank wanted to give a new Indian restaurant owners any money for any. It just, no bank wanted to touch us. And so we went to Bank of Montreal and we got ourselves a $24,000 loan based on the fact that we're renovating our home. I can't even remember. But it was really important for me to keep track of our ratio for what earnings were coming in, right, to the revenue. Like how much were we earning to the revenue? Even if we're only earning $100 a day, right? How much of that $100 that day were we keeping in earnings versus expenses?
Thank you so much, Meeru, for sharing that. And kudos to you for navigating such a difficult terrain as well. What about you, Sarah? How much did you know before starting out?
For me, I came from a liberal arts and journalism background. So I really was not very well versed. I actually had a business before my previous business, and I noticed in that business that my personal spending habits were translating into my business spending habits. So I think first I had to examine the way that I, as an individual, view money and how I use money. And once I could kind of crack that code, and I closed that business and I transitioned into this one. This is a different ball game. If anybody is considering getting into a business where you're selling a good or a product, you know that there are definitely lots of inventory spreadsheets that need to be done, cash flow projections. And I think for me, knowing our burn rate and the number at how many months we can operate, it's always at the back of my mind. And it is really the fire that ignites me every morning. And I think, I always have that information on hand. And kind of to echo what Brooke was saying was I really reached out to mentors. I really understood the importance of, first of all, getting something like a QuickBooks, just something easy, Excel spreadsheets, getting started. And then once I had a bit of cash flow going, reaching out to bookkeepers and accountants and really leaning on mentors and people who are experts in that field.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your tips as well. So our next question is, how do you guys assess a new business opportunity, whether it's a business idea or some new expansion that you want to think more about? So Sarah, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I'm very slow to be investing in anything. And when you're starting a business, you invest so much sweat equity and so much time. And so I really have to do like a lot of market research and really think about what I'm going into. But at the same time, I'm selling natural skincare, natural aromatherapy. It's a very popular time for those products. And I entered a market that was saturated, but that hasn't deterred me or stopped me. And I knew I had a message and people have responded to the message. And so it's been enough to kind of keep me moving in that direction. So I would say just kind of really do your homework.
Thank you, Sarah. What about you, Meeru? How do you assess a new business opportunity?
So I'm an extremely idealistic person in the beginning when I come up with an idea. And I would say my weakness is it never occurs to me that it might not work out, right? So when I come up with an idea and I think, oh my gosh, this is so great, my first week or two, I will drive myself and everybody else around me crazy and just going with how it's going to work out. So what I've learned to do is I sit on my ideas for a while. But while I'm sitting on them inside my own head, I am talking about them as well to people who are outside of my profession. It doesn't have to be fellow food people. It can be a fellow professor, at UBC, or it could be my daughter. It could be one of my, I need to talk things out, right? That's just who I am, with a lot of different trusted people who are also objective, not people who want to please me. So I have about, I would say, some brand new business idea every month. No joke. And I would say the ratio would be, so after about 2 years of a once a month business idea, one will take off.
Thank you so much, Meeru, for sharing that. And obviously the importance of having those close network of people who are going to give you advice, who are going to support you through this journey, because you do not have to do this alone.
Correction.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a close network. It could be somebody that I've met at a meeting, at a very long 4-hour meeting. And you know what? It's a man who's had this experience someplace else. We need to be brave enough not to just think about our own close network. We need to get out there and spread that net even to a stranger that you've just met that day, if you think that stranger is going to give you good advice. We can't surround ourselves with people who just want to please us either.
Definitely. I definitely agree with you, Meeru. So what about you, Brooke? So how do you assess an opportunity?
Yeah, here at Park and Fifth, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have 2 great business partners, which has honestly been one of the reasons for our success for sure. So I, luckily enough, get to workshop along with them a bunch of ideas within the 3 of us, but then also our team. We have a team of 15 now, and everyone's super invested in this business like we are. So we honestly take many, many ideas to our teams because they're the ones that are going to execute it with us. So they need to be behind it as well. I do absolutely agree with Meeru though, workshopping the idea to everyone and everyone that knows what you're doing at least a little bit, even if they're not in the industry at all, that helps a lot. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to sit on ideas. Absolutely, it's great if you can sit on it and do your projections and your spreadsheets and all of that, but sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to sit for very long, and sometimes you just have to jump on things. We've done that a fair amount here. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes it does. So being an entrepreneur is a lot about risk, so you really do need to weigh out sitting or risking it if it's the right time and the right place, because sometimes a lot of those opportunities come up like that, and you got to decide in the moment or let it go forever.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brooke. So our next question is, a business's success depends on its people. How do you recruit and retain top talent? So Sarah, would you like to start us off?
Sure. My business is 2 years old, so I am definitely in the thick of all this and trying to attract top talent. And I think firstly, the people that I am working with now, they all share similar values and they really resonate with the company message. And other than that, I would say just be as attractive as possible. A lot of people, COVID aside, have been leaning towards remote working arrangements. So if it's possible, if you can look at people holistically and think about their childcare arrangements, their life outside of work, and how you can make it as harmonious for them as possible, I think that is really what's attracting top talent.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What about you, Brooke?
For us, we have, we need to recruit talent in Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto because that's where our stores are. So it's kind of cross country with that. We try, just like Sarah, to make sure that we are attractive to everyone and everyone. So being an inclusive as possible, front forward out into the world. So that's like Instagram and our website and things like that. So that's all super important to attracting the right talent. But we are, a lot of the talent that we've actually found has been from referrals. So that's where we've gotten our absolute best team members, is through people knowing other people from just random parts of life. And I definitely will say we would not be here 100% without the team members we have. So that has honestly been such a big deal. I can't stress that enough, to have team members that are willing to go the extra mile like you are. But that's up to you as a business owner to make sure you treat them in that way. So retaining people is obviously just as important as finding top people, and that will be one of the reasons why your business thrives for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Brooke. How about you, Meeru?
So it depends. In the restaurant business, servers, a lot of stuff is just word of mouth. Hey, Vidges is hiring, or hey, Rangoli is hiring. So a lot of it's in the word of mouth. one important thing for us is not necessarily recruiting, it's how do we hire, how do we choose. So our general manager now, Mike, has been with us for 18 years. Our assistant manager, we have a lot of long-term staff, and I think that comes with the interviewing process. When I interview, I look at the person's potential a year from now. I don't look at what that person comes with. I look at, all right, how is this person going to grow? And I don't know if mold is the right way, but how is that person going to fit in? Communication is a really big make or break issue. And however we present ourselves on Instagram and Facebook, even our own personal lives, right? We all know how we present ourselves in that first hour is not who we really are. So the interviewing process is where I would say I really work hard in terms of, okay, how is this person going to communicate? How is this person potentially going to work out? And it's hard to really pinpoint, but then after that, sometimes I'll go to a clothing store, for example, and if I think, wow, you know what, he is so awesome, who cares if he has experience, I'll just poach. Right there, not poach in a mean way, but I'll just say, you know what, your service was awesome. If you're ever looking to train and looking for a new job, here's my information and contact me. And it's a lot of fun when they do.
Thank you so much for sharing that amazing story, Meeru, and emphasizing the importance of going out of our way and finding people. So the next question is, how do you all push through during difficult times? So Brooke, what is it that you do to push through?
I would say another one. I know I'm stressing a lot of having business partners, but those hard times make it easier when you do have people that are going through the exact same thing as you are. Going at things like that on your own is very tricky, and leaning on, partners of your own in your personal life is great, but we're lucky enough that we can lean on each other first and foremost because we actually know what's happening in those worst of times. But other than that, the three of us work in very similar ways. We just put our heads down and grind it forward and pivot wherever we need to pivot. We did that during COVID. It worked out really well. Just a short story about that. That was a pretty tricky time. Obviously, all stores were closed. We did have online, so that really carried us through. But we were able to pivot on the spot because we luckily produce all our clothing in Vancouver, so we could stop production where we needed to, slot in other things that were doing well, and lean into certain things that were really important to pump those sales out online. But again, it's talking with my business partners, figuring out what we were going to do in the moment, and then actioning as quickly as possible. So we just try and be solution oriented as much as possible, and then yes, lean on each other for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Brooke. How about you, Sarah?
I try to ensure that I'm taking care of my physical being, my mental self. So things come up all the time when you own your own business, whether it's a shipment that arrived with everything cracked, whether it's one of my larger retail accounts changing a whole bunch of requirements. It does get very stressful, and especially having a small team, I feel that I can't necessarily share those frustrations because I want to inspire confidence and project that confident spirit. But what I found is when we talk about networking is really knowing who to go to certain people for. And so, in the case of somebody, like I sell in Bed Bath and the Bay. And so there's frequently some sort of head-to-head moments with them. So I would go to one or a few of my mentors and speak to them about the situation at hand, but recognize that they're not my therapist. And then likewise, I have my circle. We all have our support system, the people that love you for you. And those are the people I talk to about how that thing made me feel. And life goes on, and things every problem will get solved in one way or another. So it's just kind of getting those things that really anchor you so that when you go through tough times, you're not swaying too much.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sarah. How about you, Meeru?
So I've got two different teams at work. So I run the overall businesses, And so our core group is me and 3 men. And so it's me, Vikram, my business partner, and then Oz, he is our CFO, and then Mike is our COO. The other side is my kitchen team, which is the woman team, and that's me, and then my 2 managers in the kitchen. It has, I mean, 26 years of running this business, starting with just 2 people, ending up with at one point 150, and now with COVID, it's, you know, way less. Since I've been doing this for so long, to cope with, depending on which team it is, we do rely on each other a lot, but I needed to make it very clear. So I remember having a meeting, and it was a very stressful period. And you know what? 2 of the guys were yelling, "Oh, we don't want to do it this way. Oh, this is going to happen. That's going to happen." And it was a long meeting, and I got weepy, right? I got a little weepy in terms of coping, and they took it as a sign of weakness. Right? They think, oh God, there's a woman's, you know, getting kind of watery-eyed at the table. And I made it very clear that men think there's nothing wrong with getting angry, right? That doesn't, so maybe my version of letting it out is a little bit of, you know, watery eyes. It doesn't mean any weakness, but I communicate with my teams. All right, when things get tough, I need to go through a little bit of a hump for about 2 minutes just to calm myself, release something in myself, and then I'm calm again, and then we can talk about it. So how do I release the tough times? We need to release whatever emotion is mucking us up in the beginning, men and women, and we need to accept that in each other, and then be that team. So I've got 2 different teams, and depending on whatever the crisis in hand is, we all and we make the decisions as a team, and we don't hold, like, we don't finger point. It's one, but we just do it together. Again, communication is really key. And the more you get the other person, who are your business partners, the less weight that is on you.
Thank you so much, Meeru, for pointing this out. And especially as women, as you mentioned, we do tend to not show our emotions because we might be thought of as weak. So definitely as entrepreneurs, we do need to be women and entrepreneurs and sort of find an intersection, which brings us to our next question. So what are some of the daily challenges you all have faced as a woman entrepreneur, sort of the intersection of the two? So Meeru, I'll just throw it back to you. What do you think?
So I'm, first of all, right, I'm an immigrant, and I identify myself as a woman of color, and I'm an American, and now I'm a Canadian. So I'm wearing a whole bunch of different hats here, and I'm looked upon differently depending on who I'm with. Sometimes I'm looked upon as American, other times I'm looked upon as a brown woman, other times a mother, everything. And I think the biggest challenge for me has been that my brand of me being me doesn't entail, because I want equal power, I want equal say, I want equality, okay? I don't want to replace a man, I want full on equality, but I get to do it my way. So I think for me, the biggest challenge has been in how do I get my voice? So I don't want to sound too tough. I don't want to become a man, that's boring, right? I mean, I want to be me. If you're too soft, you're too soft. If you're too rough, you're too rough. It's navigating my voice with a lot of different men. And the restaurant business it's a very man world. And so the challenge is making sure, and you can't tell right now, but I'm also 5'2" and very petite. And so my world entails a lot of big fat guys as well. So, and I say that with a lot of affection. It's getting my voice, right? And being really confident with my voice, whether you're clapping your hands and celebrating your successes or really having a tough time explaining why something horrible in the business has just happened. And maybe it's your fault, but you're owning up to it. So it's getting that voice and authority.
Thank you so much for sharing, Meeru. How about you, Sarah? What are the daily challenges that you face?
Luckily for me, I'm in an industry which is very female oriented. Less than 3% of venture capital still goes to female entrepreneurs. So I won't say it's equal, but there is a lot of representation, female representation. I do find myself in a past life, when we would go to events or go to certain things, I noticed I was sort of one of the only people of color. But I think I can see that that's starting to change as well, which is really nice. I think for me, a big part of the struggle is I'm wearing, like Meeru, many different hats. And so on the one hand, I've noticed some ageism in my business deals and in those workings where perhaps I'm not taken as seriously because I was younger, and I'm often coming up against people that are far more experienced, which causes you to kind of lose or have a little less faith in yourself, or perhaps second guess yourself. But on the flip side, I am a Punjabi woman, and I just turned 30 on Sunday. And so for people in my personal life, I'm hearing a lot of like, well, you know, you're 30, you're single, you don't have kids. So just trying to balance all of these different expectations that society and other people have for me while still pursuing something that I love doing every day. I think that's been a bit of a challenge.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sarah, and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
And Brooke, what about you?
Yeah, happy birthday, Sarah. Similarly to Sarah, and very different from Meeru, we are in a very female-centric industry as well. So to be perfectly blunt, we work with a bunch of females internally, like in our business, and then with certain contractors, there are a lot of female contractors as well in this business, not to mention all female clients for us. So we only make women's clothes. So that is not something I have come across that much in my career. Again, I also worked for Kit and Ace prior to this. So always working in that retail head office environment. Of course there is men, but it is majority female. So that's not something I can speak to super a lot, because I genuinely haven't had that many instances. But even in some of the very minor instances I have had, you've just got to stand up for yourself. You've got to be true to who you are. For me, I don't really care if someone thinks I'm doing something because I'm a girl or because of not. I just really genuinely don't care. Try not to think too much about it and move on, because in the end, they don't really mean that much to me. If it's a contractor that we work with, it's just like, okay, we'll finish this contract and move on. Or if you want to retake this contract after because I've proven myself to you and that's how you see it in your mind, that's fine. It's not a huge deal for me. If I get what I need out of it, that's great, and then we can just move on. So yeah, again, I don't have too many examples personally, but definitely just be true to yourself. Things will happen in your life where you don't feel like you're being heard because you're female or any other things, and you just have to be confident in your own self and push forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Brooke. So that brings us to our last question. So what is your biggest piece of advice for budding entrepreneurs, whether they're women or men? And what has worked for you in the past? So Sarah, why don't you start us off?
I'd say be idealistic, but also understand the amount of sweat equity that it's going to take, and that realistically the seed that you plant today could take a few years to really grow and to be able to reap the benefits. And in that time, there's going to be what feels like an insurmountable amount of challenges, but you just have to kind of always go back to why you started and how you want to help make the world a better place. And I think that is really a guiding light for me in difficult times.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. How about you, Meeru? What's your biggest piece of advice?
So whatever business you choose, right? Mine is, food, restaurant, cookbook writing, whatever business you choose to do, you're going to have to learn as much as possible, even the boring parts about it. And the more you know about the overall business, the finances, right? The labor, what all different aspects of it, know it all. but then be clear with yourself what you're good at, and be clear with yourself what you want to do, right? And then it's going to take a lot of hard work, even with the limited of what you want to do, right? And I always consider yourself equal, as an equal to your employees. And then the last thing is, here's my rule for being, the owner or whatever. My number one rule, and even with my kids, is number one is be firm. Number two is be kind. And number three is be respectful. That's how I mothered. That's how I run my businesses with my employees. And it has really, really paid off.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Meeru. Really good advice. How about you, Brooke?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Meeru just said. Treat people the way you want to be treated. So that absolutely stands every single day in your business and whoever you hire on. Like I said, they are going to be the people that do things better than you, that help you when you're down, that continue the business forward, because you cannot do everything by yourself. I mean, at the start you have to, but it's a smaller scale. But definitely stick your hands in every single pot that you can. And at the start, you inevitably are going to, because you don't have anyone else to help you. But when you even get to a certain stage, continue knowing exactly all the things, but then don't be afraid to delegate either. And I know this is cliche, but it's going to be extremely hard. And that sweat equity is so real. So although the time is in your own hands, which is great, it's very different than a 9 to 5. You're not, pushing the pencil for someone else. It is for you. That sweat equity is still really, really going to be there. So it's not as constrained. It's on your own time, but it's so much more work than a 9 to 5 ever probably could be. It's night and day. It's 24 hours. But again, you were in control of it. So just remember that at the end of the day, like some days when I've been working for, I don't know how long, it's for you. You make those decisions. You are the one that is going to drive that forward. You are risking it all and banking it on you, which is a little bit comforting sometimes, because you have the control or don't. So like you will make it happen or not. So does that kind of make sense? I know I said you probably like 800 times in that sentence, but
No, it definitely does make sense. Thank
yeah.
you so much, Brooke, for sharing your thoughts as well. So that brings us to the end of the questions that Lean In had. We can now open the floor to any more questions from the audience. So if you would just like to start talking, just unmute yourself, or you can also type your question in the chat, whichever works for you, whichever you feel comfortable with.
Hi, my name is Sulika, and first of all, I want to say thank you so much for organizing this. Like, it has been so insightful so far. I just wanted to ask a quick question. What's a good way to validate like an idea? Like, for example, like if you have an idea, like how do you identify like the personas, like the customer base that will be good for that idea, that product, and then how do you validate that before getting it out too much?
Can I take this one? Yeah, I would say try it in your network of friends or family if the product makes sense for them. But what we do a lot is ask around to all of our friends and family if a certain product, if they like it, if they buy it, if this price point fits. For us, it's dresses and things like that. So we kind of workshop it that way out in our own circles sometimes before really putting money behind it and producing it.
Would you like to add anything, Meeru or Sarah?
It depends on what it is that you've got, but look around and see, is this a brand new concept that you're introducing to your community or your neighbor, the business market? Is it brand new? Like Sarah had said about her product, right? Or are you entering a field that already has a lot, but you just feel like you've got something new to offer? Like just see, you're gonna have to position yourself in terms of just already how popular it is to just how it's a brand new idea.
Thank you so much. Sarah?
I would say that really important to start with something and then iterate, and don't just wait for the perfect version or the final version, because it's just never going to come. It's never going to be good enough. So for us, what we did was we created one product. We found where are the cheapest, flea markets or markets that we can go to, and let's sell the shit out of this thing. And we did, and it worked, and we signed up for more markets. And so we understood, like, there is an audience here. There are actually people that want this. And another way to do it is to create a survey monkey to do. And it's a great way to get you're out there, and people, you can just send it around on your social media and really just try to sample a small part of the population or your niche or your persona, and see, are they really your persona, and does this really resonate with them?
Awesome.
I want
Thank
to
you so
add
much.
one thing there. Something that's worked really, really well for us are Instagram polls too. Now that's very specific to our industry. But if an Instagram page is important to your industry, then that's a great way to figure out if an idea is even viable or not. So even sometimes we, at this stage of the game too, will produce samples, we'll put it up on Instagram, we'll poll it out, and then we will produce that style in different colors based on the percentage of those votes we got in that ratio of those votes. So that's been a really great thing for us to do too. And we started doing that a lot in COVID, especially when we didn't want to put it all on the line with too much inventory and get too liable with our inventory levels.
So in the end, like, some kind of prototype is always necessary. Like, it's better not to just pitch an idea, but to have some kind of prototype that people can kind of like use or see.
Absolutely, that works for us for sure.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I had a question. I just wanted to know, when doing market research for a certain product you want to put out there, or service, or anything of that sort, what kind of, I know the product research is going to depend, the kind of questions you ask is going to be dependent on the product or the service, but can you share any sort of insights on the kind of questions we should be asking, the kind of people we should be asking, and that sort of thing, like basically how to navigate our market research?
I guess for us, it's the people need to match the product. So make sure that you're asking the right type of people for the right type of products that it is. So if it's, if you're going to go market hockey skates, for example, you're going to ask hockey players what their favorite version of that hockey skate is. So for us, we make women's dresses. So we ask a lot of our girlfriends and sisters and moms and, things like that, if they like X, Y, and Z dress. So just make sure they align as best as possible.
I want to add to that as well. Some people hire companies to do their market research for them. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but you need to balance it off when you're starting out with your own physical, exactly what Brooke was saying. You need to also do your own market research in terms of just talking to people. The hockey stick example was a great idea. For me, and new food ideas, it's great because everybody eats, right? Everybody has ideas about food and so on. So be very careful in terms of hiring somebody. And if you do hire someone else to do it, I'm just repeating myself, make sure you've got your pulse on live human beings as well.
Thank you so much, Meeru, for sharing. Sarah, would you like to add something?
I think when you're in the stage of market research, it's really valuable to identify competitors and to use them to benchmark prices, see what price point your product or service can be set at, and to just sort of study them and to kind of learn, are there any things you can avoid, or is there something that they're doing particularly well? And then I would advise you to forget about them. but it just for starting up stage, I think it's really valuable to see what your peers in the industry are up to.
And sorry, just to build on that, do you focus when you have an idea that you want to create multiple services or products for, how do you know what to focus on first? Like, for example, Sarah, you have, your wellness line, right? So when you first started this, you might have thought, oh, I want to come out with this product, but I also want to come out with this service, but I also want to offer this. So how do you kind of find direction on what to target first, or the best way to know how to go about it, basically?
It'll be a combination of voice of customer and intuition. Certain things you'll just they'll come together and you'll just feel that they're right, and things will go successfully. But often I find voice of the customer and really putting your product or service out there. If it's a service, offering a free consultation where you can pitch them. If it's a product, really taking it to a small market and then just iterating. Customers will tell you what they want. They will tell you directly. And it is really a trend right now as well to crowdsource ideas for products. Customers love to feel involved in the creation of a product. And so just really using the people around you to help guide you. And sometimes you'll think that a product is going to be really successful, and the audience just isn't there for it. And then you have to just understand, okay, let's put this to bed and let's focus on where it is working and channel all of our energy towards that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We have a question from Jasmine. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. So as experienced entrepreneurs, I'm wondering, would you start a business in the current climate?
Yeah, it depends. Again, it depends on what the business is.
Okay.
So right now I'm in the process of starting a new business, but it's at the very, very infant stage of the business. And in a way, it's the perfect time because of COVID-19 and everything that's happening. There's no rush.
Yeah.
Right now, right? I'm actually taking advantage of the lull and really working carefully at it. And I've never actually worked on a new business product with such little frenzy as there is right now. So yeah, it depends on what it is. And one thing I want to add to this all. I'm really good at just chatting up strangers.
Yeah.
I think
too.
There's a good, so my product that I'm working on right now deals with babies and toddlers. Okay. And so it's like, okay, so if I see a dad with a little 6-month-old, I have absolutely no problems just going up to that dad and saying, hey, I'm Meeru from Bidges. And then just chit-chatting about what it is. And then that's how I actually got my babies. I needed objective babies, right? And that's how I got my babies to try the new product that I'm coming up with. I just randomly, if I felt the energy of a dad or a mom right? I said, oh, well, do you want to do this? And people actually, like Sarah was saying, people love being a part of something. People, especially right now during COVID-19, if it's a product that involves, again, live human contact, people are really open to it right now.
Yeah, I'm thinking in the catering space, so that's why I was interested to hear what you had to say.
Mm-hmm.
Brooke or Sarah, would you like to add something to this?
Sure. I think if it's a COVID-proof business, absolutely. There is a lot of time to think about what you're going to do and be very, very thoughtful, because everyone seems to have more time these days. And banks will also be open to COVID-proof businesses. A lot of businesses have closed, but there is a lot of money out there still trying to flood the local Vancouver economy to get it back up there. So there is money for entrepreneurs to start out things. Banks are really wary right now of businesses that would be affected by COVID. So that may be tricky, but yeah, absolutely. I think now could be a great time.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Sarah, would you like to add something?
I would agree with Meeru and just say it depends on, what the business is, and how can you open it and make it COVID proof, knowing that there is all these PPE protocols and knowing that we could very well head into another shutdown. So it's a bit of a risky time, but it definitely depends on the business.
Thank you so much. Is there any other question from the audience?
I have a question. Hey, I was curious because I'm a business owner myself, and when March rolled around, everyone was so worried. Now that we're actually near the end of the year, what was the one major thing that you learned about yourself or about the business that really helped you persevere during this difficult time?
I can start, but I mean, either Brooke or Sarah, you can go ahead of me. I've spoken so much, I need to. Well, I can start. I would say, so this is going back to your team, right? And not just your intimate team, but what got us through it. So I decided on, I think 2 days before the government shut us down. So my partner is on the federal task force for COVID-19. And so I have a bit of inside information. And so I decided 2 days beforehand, like, all right, we're shutting things down. I'm not putting my staff out there. So we immediately shut, the restaurants down. And we had never done takeout or delivery before at Vidges ever. And we were never open for lunch and so on. It was really, I realized how I'm not a solo person. That was my biggest thing. And the core team, my 15 kitchen staff, the women in the kitchen, my core management team, I really realized at that point, like, whoa, yeah, that we were all equals, despite our positions, despite our pay, because I realized that you really, at this point, the dishwasher was as important as the head chef, as important as the accountant. Every piece of that puzzle is required in an emergency. So never ignore any piece of your business puzzle, the human piece of the business puzzle, ever, because it'll come around and help or bite you.
Thank you for sharing, Meeru. How about you, Sarah?
For me, especially when March first hit, it was how do we continue to sell through social media, through all these different channels, at a time when there is so much fear, when people are out of work, when money is scarce, and when people are legitimately worried about their health. And so the first thought, and kind of going back to intuition, was for us to just kind of step off the gas a little bit and to stop with the ramping up the paid ads. And we just stopped and we listened, and we saw, the different approaches. Some brands just continued on selling as though the world wasn't burning outside, and that came off as callous. Some brands, offered sort of well wishes and tried to make everybody, still laugh and still feel gratitude. And so kind of after about a week and a half, we really listened to our customers and the news sources and the other places that our customers go for information. And so from then on, we pivoted our strategy, and we instead started writing about self-care, how to care for yourself, things you can do at home during the pandemic. And we really kind of switched the focus. And then at the same time, people were starting to understand, okay, we're going to be staying at home for a duration of time. people stopped hoarding toilet paper, things got a little bit calmer. And in that time, our sales actually skyrocketed as people stayed home and wanted to make their environment smell nice and to take that self-care. So this has actually been definitely our best last 2 quarters to date. And so it's been definitely an up and down, but I'm really grateful for just this challenge because it's really taught me to listen more than I talk in business.
Thank you so much, Sarah. How about you, Brooke? Would you like to share something?
Yeah, we shut all 3 of our stores down, our brick and mortar stores. They closed March 16th, but we do have an online store, and we did then. So we really, really leaned into that. We offer this program called virtual fittings. It sounds much more high tech than it is. Our team literally just meets shoppers over FaceTime or Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever. And they watch them measure themselves so they can order the right size without having to return and exchange online. That can be really annoying. So we try and cut that part out. So we actually really leaned into that section. We didn't let anyone go on our team, which was, we were super thankful to not have to do that. And all we did was pop them at home with their computers, and we did virtual fittings from the 3 time zones that we're in. So the Mountain Time, the Eastern Time, and the Western Time. That really helped a lot. We are wedding industry focused. Bridesmaids dresses are our bread and butter. We also have bridal as well. So although weddings were not happening during those months and we weren't really sure what was going to happen this summer, we started to really lean into the white dresses because we thought people were going to start to elope, cancel their weddings, change their plans. That did really happen, and that worked in our favor. So although we're in the retail industry, we're in a nice little pocket of the wedding industry as well. So that's kind of a nice, comfortable, safe place to be. Since it's so safe and people still get married during a global pandemic, we leaned into that. So that's what we've been doing since then. Our stores have since opened as well, and people are shopping more regularly and kind of going back to their daily lives, but you never know, it could go backwards for sure. And then if it does, we'll be pivoting in the same way again, and probably something different, because you obviously have to change all the time depending on where it's going, and so much more this year than any other year before. Just things are changing in every aspect constantly, so you do just really have to go with that.
I want to add one more thing before I forget. This is when when a pandemic hits from behind, kind of, and you weren't expecting, this to be happening March, April, May, June. This is the whole reason why it's important not to foolishly spend money in your business, because you never know when you're going to need a little bit of safety money to carry you over. And the reason I'm saying that is because the pandemic caught me at a time where we were foolishly spending money. So I'm not even preaching that to you. I'm telling you, and I wouldn't say foolishly, but the pandemic hit us when we had more debt than we had savings because of various, new business investments and stuff like that. In my business, you're only as fashionable as the newest restaurant that opens. So we're constantly having to redesign things, new plates, new lamps. And sometimes I realize that, we overspent in terms of plates and design and lamps and patio and stuff like that. We spent beyond our means, and then the pandemic hit. So always be very careful and not too cocky. I don't know, are we allowed to use that word? In my generation, that was a fine word to use. I don't want to offend anybody, but not to be too cocky that, oh yeah, I can spend the money because I'm going to be earning it right back in 6 months' time. So always have that bit about, your little safety fund. And if sometimes you need to take that risk, and you need to overstretch your spending, but do your best to have a backup plan so you don't get caught from behind.
Thanks, Meeru, Brooke, and Sarah. Those were some really good lessons that you guys shared. So thanks.
We can take one more question from the audience before we wrap up, if there's anybody who'd like to ask.
For sure, I can ask something. So thank you so much to the panelists for being here. I have an interesting topic to start. So I know that had some
I can't hear. I can't hear.
No.
No.
No. No, okay, I'm going to be weirdly close, but I guess my question is just, I know a lot of you had other experiences before pursuing your own venture, whether that was Amnesty International or Kitten Ace or having a different venture. And I was just wondering if you thought, kind of going back, would you have started your business earlier, or do you think the experience you got beforehand was valuable in itself as well?
I can start this one. 100% for me, the experience was so valuable. I got my job at Kitten Ace right out of business school, and there's no way I would have been able to have made the decisions I made now if I started the business with my partners right out of business school. This is just my specific example though. I mean, everyone is very, very different, but at Kitten Ace, I really learned so much. I got to manage a lot of people. I've learned so many different skills that I never would have learned if I wasn't in that type of a structure. And I started at that business as employee number like 20 or 25 or something. So very early on, it grew to have like 80 stores worldwide. And then it came right back down the other end to pretty much close all of them and just have 6 Canadian stores. So I was there for 3 years, and it felt like doing my MBA times 10. It was crazy. So for me specifically, it was a lot of great learning opportunity that I've absolutely taken into this business now, what to do and what not to do. So for me, yes, I wouldn't have traded that for the world, but everyone's so different and everyone's path is different. So it absolutely depends.
I agree with Brooke. For me, my master's degree was crucial. And even though the master's degree was in economic development, what is economic development? It is, how do you take a poor country, okay, and elevate it to mid-level to, from third world to second world to first world. So it's politics. Politics is your staff, okay? It is, it's whatever you have to do. It's economics, that's your finances, right? And it's sociology, which is your customer base. That's how I looked at it. And my field work was in India, and my field work was with women entrepreneurs. However, women entrepreneurs in the slums, right? Who needed to borrow, say, $50 or something like that. And so I spent a year working in India. And that work that I did for my field work, plus getting that degree, that was crucial when we were actually setting up. Okay, what do I want? What kind of a business do I want? And I wanted a very, very woman-focused business.
I think for myself, I wouldn't trade the experiences, good or bad, for anything, and everything builds on each other. And I know when you have a business and you're so excited, you're so idealistic, and you tell everybody, you shout it from the rooftops. And so for me, my first business was a service-based business, and we did corporate videography for clients like Holt Renfrew and Vancouver Art Gallery. And we did it for 2 years, myself and a partner, and then we eventually started hiring contractors. And I felt so like I had just fallen out of love with it, and it was so tedious. And I had to make the decision to shut down the business and essentially fail. And while that was really difficult to, now go to the people that I've talked about my business to and say, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. It's difficult, but you're only failing up. It's not like it's done forever. And so the lessons, the painful lessons, learning my boundaries and learning to not be a workaholic, all of that came from having these tougher experiences in my previous business. So definitely everything happens for a reason, and experience is the best teacher.
One thing we didn't touch upon on this is I learned a lot from my mom and dad. We haven't talked about learning from your parents or your uncles or aunts or whoever. So we moved, I was in kindergarten. No, I started kindergarten in the States when we moved from India. And so my family, you know, my dad was a civil engineer. We were like working class, middle class. And then my dad decided to go into business when I was in grade 10. And he gave they put all their savings into this business. It was the dumbest thing even then, I remember thinking, but my dad was confident with his business partners. So we went bankrupt and then lived in a homeless shelter. We were homeless. We were bankrupt and homeless for 3 months, the summer between grade 9 and grade 10. Not a fun thing to do. Being homelessness really, really, it sucks. But then I watched my parents go from being homeless to then by the time I was 18, my dad had become a millionaire. Right? And so that was a really, as kooky as my parents were, I really did learn a lot. Not even necessarily from, you know, mom, what happened? Just watching. And there's a lot we can also learn from people who have gone through it, or sometimes just what not to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brooke, Meeru, and Sarah, for sharing your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'd like to thank the 3 fearless entrepreneurs who joined us tonight. Thank you so much, Meeru, Sarah, and Brooke, for being honest about your journey and sharing your insights as well as your time. I am sure many of us here feel more empowered to chart our paths as entrepreneurs. I'd also like to thank you all for joining us and giving Lean In your time and energy. And a recording of today's event will be shared with you all in our post-event email. And please continue to support us and join us tomorrow for our event on resilience and surviving a pandemic. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon in our next event. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.